Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we drift beneath the surface of the ocean, into a world where intelligence does not always look the way we expect. Here, in shifting light and shadow, lives a creature with no bones, 3 hearts, and a mind that seems to reach through every part of its body. It moves like water itself, reshaping, rethinking, responding in ways that feel both familiar and strangely alien. The octopus invites us to reconsider what a mind can be and how life can solve the same problems in entirely different ways. It hides in plain sight, it explores with living arms, and it navigates a world of texture, taste, and constant change. The deeper we look, the more unusual it becomes. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, simply settle in. Let your shoulders soften and your breathing slow. Allow your thoughts to loosen their grip as we sink into this remarkable underwater world. Let's begin. Octopuses have 3 hearts, and 2 stop beating when they swim. That sounds impossible at first, yet it is one of the clearest signs that an octopus is built for a life unlike ours. 2 of those hearts push blood across the gills, where oxygen is collected from seawater. The 3rd sends that oxygen-rich blood around the rest of the body. But when the animal shifts into fast jet propulsion, the system becomes so demanding that the main body heart temporarily stops. Swimming is effective in a crisis, though it is costly. That is why many species prefer to crawl over rock, sand, and coral instead of racing through open water. Even though circulation hints at a life shaped by trade-offs where speed is expensive and efficiency matters. It is a strange design, but it works beautifully in the cold, dim, pressurized world where these animals hunt, hide, and survive. Octopus blood is blue because it carries oxygen with copper. We rely on iron in hemoglobin, which gives our blood its familiar red. These animals use a different molecule called hemocyanin, and that molecule is built around copper. When it binds oxygen, the blood takes on a deep blue color that feels almost invented by science fiction. Yet this chemistry is not a novelty. It helps them cope with demanding marine conditions, especially in cold water where oxygen behaves differently and the body needs a transport system that still performs under stress. That unusual blood is part of a larger pattern. Nearly everything about them feels like evolution, taking an unfamiliar path and making it work. Their bodies are soft. Their movements can be explosive. Their nervous system is distributed in ways that surprise us. Even at the level of blood, they remind us that life does not follow one plan. It keeps finding new answers to the same old problem of staying alive. An octopus can vanish by changing both color and skin texture. What makes this so astonishing is that it is not a simple fade into the background. The body can shift from pale to dark in a flash, then add mottled patches, sharp contrasts, or smooth washes that match the world around it. At the same time, the skin itself can rise into bumps, folds, and ridges, so a soft animal begins to resemble rock, algae, coral, or broken shell. A predator looking straight at it may still fail to see it. This is not only concealment, it is perception turned into performance. The animal reads light, pattern, and surface, then transforms its own body into an answer. What disappears is not just the outline. The whole identity seems to dissolve. One moment there is an alert hunter on the reef. The next, there is only seabed, texture, shadow, and the unsettling sense that the ocean itself might be watching. Much of an octopus mind is spread through its arms. For us, the brain feels like headquarters. For an octopus, control is far more distributed. A huge share of its neurons sits outside the central brain, especially in the arms, which means each limb can process information and respond with surprising independence. An arm can probe a crevice, taste a surface, adjust its grip, and continue exploring while the animal is doing something else entirely. That creates a very different kind of intelligence, one shaped by touch, motion, and many streams of action at once. It is less like a commander issuing orders and more like a network of skilled partners working together in real time. This may be why encounters with them feel so strange. You are not dealing with a creature that only reaches. You are dealing with a creature that seems to think through reaching. Every movement is investigation. Every contact is decision. The mind is not simply behind the eyes. It is everywhere. An octopus can solve problems that stump many other animals. Place one in a bare tank with a puzzle, and it often does more than react. It studies, tests, remembers, and adapts. Individuals have unscrewed lids, opened containers, and learned how to reach a reward by using methods that look less like instinct and more like deliberate experimentation. What makes this gripping is not only success, it is the style of success. There is often a pause, a feeling of assessment, then a sequence of actions that changes when the first attempt fails. That flexibility matters in the wild, where food may be hidden inside shells, wedged under stone, or protected by armor and timing. A hunter that can improvise gains an edge. We tend to reserve words like clever for animals that look familiar to us, especially those with faces we can read. Yet here is a soft-bodied mollusk showing curiosity, persistence, and what seems very close to practical reasoning under pressure. Some octopuses collect coconut shells and carry them like portable armor. This behavior startled researchers because it looks so purposeful. The animal finds split shells on the seafloor, gathers the pieces, and walks away with them tucked beneath the body. The load is awkward. It slows movement and offers no immediate benefit while being carried. Yet later, when danger threatens or rest is needed, those same shells can be assembled into a snug shelter. That is what makes the scene so memorable. It suggests planning. The octopus accepts inconvenience in the present for protection in the future. In human terms, that feels uncannily familiar. In evolutionary terms, it is extraordinary in a creature so distant from us. The ocean floor is full of hazards, and a ready-made refuge can mean survival. So what looks almost comic at first becomes profound on second glance. A boneless hunter is not just reacting to its world. It is gathering equipment, transporting it, and preparing for what has not happened yet. An octopus has no bones, so it can pore through tiny gaps. If the beak can fit, the rest of the body usually can too. That single rule turns the animal into a master of impossible-looking escapes. Hard tanks, narrow crevices, drain openings, and cracks in reef stone can all become routes to freedom. Watching one squeeze through a space that seems absurdly small can feel like watching liquid think. The body elongates, compresses, and reforms with eerie calm, as if shape were only a temporary suggestion. This softness is more than a party trick. It opens hunting ground sealed to rigid predators, and it offers a way out when a larger enemy closes in. A fish may have speed. A crab may have armor. An octopus has options. It can enter hidden chambers, raid tucked-away prey, and vanish into places where jaws and claws cannot follow. The absence of a skeleton sounds like a weakness, until you see how much freedom that softness creates. Some octopuses can mimic other animals so well they fool predators. Camouflage hides what you are. Mimicry goes further and suggests you are something else entirely. Certain species can shape their arms, alter their posture, and coordinate color changes so convincingly that they resemble dangerous or unappealing animals nearby. A predator expecting an easy meal may suddenly seem to face a venomous fish, a drifting flatfish, or a sea snake, but is not worth the risk. What is so thrilling here is the flexibility. This is not one disguise worn forever. It is a menu of identities selected according to the threat and the setting. The body becomes theater with life or death stakes. That talent also hints at a deep sensitivity to context. To mimic effectively, the animal must match not only appearance, but movement, timing, and place. The result is one of the strangest survival strategies in the sea. A creature with no shell and no spine survives by becoming, for a moment, someone nobody wants to attack. A mother octopus guards her eggs until she dies. Once the eggs are laid, her life narrows to a single task. She hangs over them or beside them for weeks, months, and in some deep sea cases far longer, teening them with careful arms and fanning them with water so they stay free of smothering growth and rich in oxygen. During this vigil, she often stops hunting. Her body weakens. Her skin grows duller. Yet she continues tending the developing young with extraordinary persistence. This is one of the most haunting stories in the ocean because it is not dramatic in the usual way. It is patient, quiet devotion carried to the very edge of life. By the time the eggs hatch, she is often near death or already dying. For the next generation, that sacrifice is everything. The eggs do not receive warmth, milk, or parental teaching. They receive protection at the most vulnerable stage. She gives them the one gift the sea rarely offers for long: a chance. Octopuses may be the closest thing Earth has to an alien mind, not because they come from elsewhere, but because they show how intelligence can arise in a form so different from our own. They are not social apes with hands and faces like ours. They are short-lived marine mollusks with 8 flexible arms, distributed control, chemical sensing through suckers, and a body that can rewrite its silhouette from one moment to the next. Their ancestry diverged from ours hundreds of millions of years ago. Since then, evolution has been running a separate experiment. The result is a creature that can explore, learn, solve, and adapt, yet does so through a sensory world and bodily design that feel deeply unfamiliar. That is why people often describe encounters with them in almost mystical terms. The strangeness is real. When an octopus studies you, there is recognition of some kind, but not one that fits neatly into human categories. It is intelligence without a familiar face, and that makes it both thrilling and humbling. Every octopus arm can taste what it touches. That means the world arrives through contact in a way that is hard for us to imagine. When an arm slides over rock, shell, or prey, it is not only feeling shape and texture. It is also sampling chemistry, almost as though the hand and tongue have merged into one organ. This gives the animal a rich map of its surroundings without needing to bite first, or even see clearly. In dark crevices, beneath ledges, or inside cluttered reefs, that ability becomes extraordinary. An arm can reach into a hidden space and gather information before the rest of the body commits to danger. It is a style of perception built for secrecy, caution, and surprise. We usually think of tasting as something that happens at the mouth. Here, taste travels outward into exploration itself, and the hunt begins long before prey is seized. Curiosity is written into the limbs. Octopus suckers grip with astonishing strength and remarkable precision. Each one can attach firmly enough to hold fast in moving water, yet delicately enough to examine something small and fragile without crushing it. That balance matters because the arms do far more than grab. They climb, investigate, manipulate, and restrain, often all within seconds. A shell can be pinned while another arm searches for an opening. A slippery fish can be caught in a sudden spread of contact points that close like a net with a mind behind it. The suckers do not act like simple cups. They create a flexible, responsive grip that works on uneven surfaces and shifting bodies. When many engage at once, the effect is almost uncanny. A creature with no bones can become impossible to shake loose. Divers sometimes describe the experience with a mix of laughter and awe, because it feels less like being touched by an animal and more like being examined by many curious fingers at once. An octopus can regrow a lost arm. That ability turns injury from a catastrophe into a brutal setback that can still be survived. In the wild, arms may be damaged by predators, bitten during conflict, or torn in desperate escapes. For many animals, such losses would permanently ruin hunting, balance, or defense. Here, the story can continue. Over time, new tissue forms and the missing limb gradually returns, restoring function to a body that depends on 8 coordinated extensions. This is not magical healing done overnight. It is a slow biological rebuilding project, and it demands energy from an animal already living in a dangerous world. Yet the payoff is enormous. A hunter that can recover from serious damage gets another chance at life. The deeper wonder lies in what is being rebuilt. It is not just flesh. It is a working arm with movement, sensation, and fine control. The body remembers the shape it needs and begins making it again. Its beak is the only hard part of its body. Hidden at the center where the arms meet, it is sharp, dark, and powerful enough to crack into meals that seem well protected from attack. Crabs, shellfish, and other armored prey may look safe behind plates, claws, and rigid barriers. Then this compact tool gets to work. The rest of the animal may be all softness and fluid motion, but the mouth is built for piercing and tearing. There is something almost startling about that contrast. A body that can flatten into a gap no wider than a coin carries, at its core, a weapon as hard as horn. The whole design depends on this arrangement. Softness grants access. The beak finishes the job. It is also the reason body size can be deceptive, because a narrow opening matters less than you might expect. If that central hard part can pass through, the rest can often follow, and hidden prey is no longer hidden. An octopus can squirt ink to confuse eyes and noses. When danger closes in, the response can be so sudden that a clear scene becomes chaos. A dark cloud erupts into the water, breaking the predator's view and muddying the chemical trail at the same time. That second part is easy to miss if we imagine escape as purely visual. Many hunters in the sea track by scent and dissolved cues as well as sight. So the released plume is not just a smokescreen. It is interference across more than one sense. In some cases, it may even form a thicker, deca-like blob that briefly suggests a body where no body remains. Those few stolen moments are priceless. The attacker lunges at confusion while the real target slips away. It is a tactic with drama built into it, and it suits an animal that survives through timing rather than armor. The sea fills with a false story, and the storyteller disappears before the ending is challenged. Some deep-sea octopuses do not use ink at all. Down in darkness, the famous cloud would offer far less value. There is little light to block, and producing ink costs resources that matter in a place where food can be scarce and survival is measured carefully. So, some species have taken a different path. Instead of relying on that familiar defense, they live in conditions that reward other strategies, including stillness, transparency, stealth, and bodies shaped for a world with crushing pressure and endless night. This is one of the most revealing things about them. The deeper you go, the more the usual octopus image begins to shift. The dramatic inky escape belongs largely to shallower settings where vision matters. In the deep sea, evolution edits the script. Traits that seem iconic near the surface may become unnecessary far below. That reminds us that there is no single octopus design. There are many versions, each molded by the strange demands of its own realm. Octopuses can jet through water like living rockets. The movement begins when water is drawn into the mantle cavity and then blasted out through a siphon. That sudden force sends the body shooting in the opposite direction with startling speed. It can look almost unbelievable, as though a loose bag of silk has become a projectile. This is the emergency gear, the burst of motion used when hesitation could mean death. One instant, the animal is part of the reef. The next, it is gone in a surge that feels mechanical in its efficiency and completely alive in its unpredictability. The siphon can also be aimed, which gives some control over direction during the escape. That makes the launch more than a panicked dash. It is targeted propulsion. In calm moments, other forms of movement may be preferred. But when the sea suddenly turns hostile, this soft-bodied hunter reveals a propulsion system that belongs in engineering diagrams as much as in marine biology. They can also creep slowly across the seafloor on their arms. This style of movement feels almost opposite to jetting. Instead of fleeing in a burst, the animal becomes deliberate, controlled, and strangely patient. It lifts, places, and shifts its limbs with care, advancing over sand, rubble, and reef in a way that lets it stay close to cover and read the terrain as it goes. That matters for a hunter that often depends on stealth. Fast movement draws attention. Slow movement can make the body seem less like an intruder and more like part of the landscape. There is also an eerie elegance to it. The animal appears to walk, yet not like anything with legs. It glides through a sequence of grips and releases, as though the ground is being persuaded rather than crossed. This is one reason watching one in the wild can feel unforgettable. Every pace suggests choice. Every pause suggests thought. Even locomotion becomes a kind of intelligence made visible. Octopus skin contains tiny organs that flash color in an instant. These are called chromatophores, and they work like a living display spread across the body. Each one contains pigment that can expand or contract under muscular control, revealing more color or hiding it in fractions of a second. When thousands respond together, patterns bloom across the skin with astonishing speed. A body that looked plain a moment earlier can suddenly blaze with contrast, darken into shadow, or ripple with shifting signals. This is not paint sitting still. It is an active surface under neural command. That matters because color can serve more than concealment. It can also help startle threats, communicate during encounters, or express arousal and alarm. The skin becomes a medium for rapid change, almost like thought appearing on the outside. That is part of what makes these animals so mesmerizing to watch. They do not simply move through the environment. Their very surface participates in every tense, responsive moment. Their skin can raise papillae that imitate rock, coral, or weed. Color alone would not be enough in many places, because the sea is full of texture as well as pattern. So the body adds relief. Small, muscular structures in the skin can push upward and transform a smooth outline into something ragged, knobbly, or uneven. The effect can be astonishing at close range. A creature that looked sleek and soft becomes rough enough to resemble a clump of algae, a coral fragment, or a stone furred with marine growth. This is not decoration. It is three-dimensional deception, and it works because predators do not only judge by hue. They judge by shape, edge, and surface too. By changing all of those together, the animal becomes harder to recognize as prey. What makes this so remarkable is the speed of the transformation. Texture seems to rise out of nowhere. The body does not merely wear camouflage. It reshapes its own landscape and slips into it. Some octopuses punch fish during hunts. That sounds absurd until you picture the scene underwater. An octopus is not simply chasing prey in a straight line. In some cooperative hunts, it may move alongside fish that also want to flush hidden animals from coral. At first, this looks like teamwork across species, and in many ways it is. But then comes the strange twist. Researchers have seen octopuses lash out with a sudden strike, hitting a nearby fish hard enough to shove it aside. The blow is fast, targeted, and unmistakable. Why do it? Sometimes the fish may be in the way. Sometimes it may be taking more than its share. Sometimes the octopus may be enforcing space in a partnership full of tension. Whatever the reason, the moment feels astonishingly familiar. It suggests calculation, frustration, and control inside a hunt that is already complex. Even when working with others, this animal can turn forceful in an instant. An octopus can open jars from the inside. That ability has become famous for a reason, because it reveals more than dexterous arms. Imagine being enclosed in a glass container with a lid above you, in a world where turning, pulling, and testing each edge must all be done with flexible limbs covered in suckers. Then, imagine solving it. Octopuses have done exactly that in experiments, twisting caps and working their way out with movements that look startlingly deliberate. The impressive part is not just escape. It is the sequence. They explore, locate resistance, adjust their grip, and keep going until the mechanism yields. For us, a jar belongs to kitchens and hands. For them, it becomes a puzzle in an alien setting, yet the logic still transfers. That is what feels so compelling. The animal is meeting a human-made obstacle with persistence and practical manipulation. It does not belong in the task, and yet it proves strangely good at it. They learn by exploration, memory, and trial and error. That combination gives them a style of intelligence that feels active rather than automatic. Instead of relying only on fixed responses, they investigate. They reach, test, withdraw, return, and gradually build knowledge from what worked and what did not. In a variable world full of shells, crevices, prey defenses, and sudden danger, that flexibility is powerful. An individual can remember a useful route, a difficult object, or an unpleasant encounter, then behave differently next time. What makes this especially fascinating is how physical the learning seems to be. The body is part of the thinking. Arms probe, suckers sample. Movement becomes experiment. This is not the kind of mind that sits back and contemplates from a distance. It gathers understanding by direct contact with the world. That gives its intelligence a vivid, tactile quality. Knowledge is not merely stored. It is earned through repeated acts of curiosity, risk, and adjustment. Octopuses are masters of escape in aquariums and laboratories. Keepers and researchers have collected stories for years that sound like scenes from a heist film. A tank appears secure, a lid seems closed, and yet by morning the animal is somewhere it absolutely should not be. Some have slipped through filtration gaps. Others have crossed short stretches outside their enclosures to reach neighboring tanks, often in pursuit of food. These are not random accidents. They reveal persistence, body control, and an unnerving ability to identify weak points in whatever contains them. A barrier that stops fish may barely count as a suggestion here. Smooth walls can be climbed. Small openings can become exits. If there is moisture, time, and opportunity, the odds shift in the animal's favor. That is why so many stories about captive individuals feel legendary. The creature does not just survive in confinement. It studies the problem of confinement itself, and sometimes it wins. Some have been seen plugging dens with stones and shells. A den is more than a hiding place. It is home base, lookout, shelter, and the thin boundary between safety and disaster. So when an octopus gathers loose objects and arranges them at the entrance, the behavior feels deeply significant. Stones, shell fragments, and bits of debris can be moved into position to narrow an opening or obstruct it altogether. From the outside, the den becomes harder to inspect. From the inside, the occupant gains a defensive advantage. This is not elaborate architecture in the human sense, yet it is still a meaningful alteration of the environment. The animal is not passively accepting what the reef offers. It is improving it. That matters because a predator searching among rocks may miss a retreat that looks cluttered, blocked, or uninviting. In the sea, a few well-placed objects can create crucial doubt. The hunter outside hesitates, and hesitation is often enough to save the life within. They can build doorways that make hiding places safer. That image sounds almost fairy tale strange, but it captures something real about how carefully some individuals manage the entrance to a refuge. A crack in the rock may be useful on its own, yet it can become far better when the opening is modified to suit the occupant's needs. By shifting objects around the threshold, the animal can make entry tighter, more defensible, and easier to monitor. That transforms a mere cavity into a controlled space. The doorway becomes selective. A slender arm can move through. A watchful eye can peer out. A large predator may find the approach awkward or impossible. What is so gripping is that this suggests a form of practical design. The animal is not simply hiding from the world. It is adjusting the world to shape the terms of any encounter. Safety, here, is not only found. It is constructed through judgment, placement, and a sharp sense of what danger can fit through. An octopus can watch with one eye while the other scans elsewhere. That creates a style of awareness that feels wonderfully strange. Instead of fixing both eyes on a single target in the way we often do, it can divide attention across different parts of the scene. One eye may stay trained on a possible threat. The other may monitor escape routes, prey movement, or changes in the surrounding water. In a habitat where danger can arrive from many directions, that split surveillance makes excellent sense. The body is low, flexible, and close to cover, and the eyes rise above it like alert instruments mounted for different tasks. This does not mean the animal sees the world exactly as we do, only with more range. It means its visual attention can be distributed in a way that suits a hunter that is also frequently hunted. The result is an unsettling impression of constant awareness. Even while still, it may be tracking more than one story at once. Their pupils can stretch into strange shapes underwater. In bright conditions, the opening of the eye does not always remain round. It can narrow into elongated forms that look almost theatrical, as though the eye itself has been stylized for a science fiction creature. Yet this is not decoration. Pupil shape influences how light enters the eye, and in the shifting brightness of shallow water that matters enormously. Sunlight refracts, flickers, and scatters beneath the surface. A visual system that can manage glare while preserving useful information gains a major advantage. The odd shape may also relate to how the animal handles contrast and orientation in a world of ripples, shadows, and moving surfaces. What makes this so compelling is that even the eyes carry an air of otherness. People often notice the gaze of an octopus before they understand anything about its biology. Then they learn that the very window into its perception is unlike ours in both form and function. Octopuses are colorblind, yet they still perform dazzling camouflage. That is one of the most intriguing paradoxes in marine biology. How can an animal match surroundings so effectively if it does not perceive color in the way we do? The answer is still being explored, and that uncertainty makes the story even better. They may rely heavily on brightness, contrast, texture, and polarized light, using cues that allow astonishingly accurate body changes without ordinary color vision. In other words, they may be solving the problem by reading the world through a different set of signals. That possibility reshapes how we think about perception itself. We tend to assume that to master a visual trick, an animal must experience the scene as we would. But nature is under no obligation to follow human assumptions. Here is a creature producing some of the finest disguise on Earth, while perhaps sensing the visual world in an entirely different way. The camouflage becomes more mysterious, not less. Scientists are still uncovering how octopus camouflage works so well. That ongoing mystery is part of the wonder. We know some of the machinery. Pigment cells shift. Reflective structures contribute. Skin texture changes. Posture alters the outline. Yet when all of this comes together in the wild, the result can exceed what those separate parts seem to promise. An octopus can settle beside coral, rubble, or weed, and become so convincing that even trained observers lose track of it. The challenge for science is not merely naming the components. It is understanding the speed, coordination, and sensory guidance behind the full performance. How does the animal judge which details matter most? How does it decide between blending, startling display, and disguise by resemblance? Those questions are still alive. That is exciting because it means the octopus has not been fully explained away by science. The closer we look, the more impressive the achievement appears. Knowledge has grown, yet the animal keeps some of its magic. Octopuses are mollusks, which makes them relatives of clams and snails. That fact can feel almost impossible to accept because one branch of the family seems built for stillness, while the other feels like pure invention. Clams bury themselves. Snails creep with a shell on their back. Then, from that same ancient lineage, comes an animal that can solve puzzles, change its appearance, and move with astonishing freedom. The connection matters because it reminds us that evolution does not move in a straight line toward anything familiar. It improvises. It keeps old foundations and reshapes them into new forms. Underneath all the strangeness, the octopus still belongs to the soft-bodied world of mollusks. That is part of what makes it so captivating. It is not a distant cousin of monkeys or birds. It is a transformed relative of creatures we often overlook on beaches and tide lines. From such quiet ancestry came one of the most startling minds in the sea, which makes the whole family tree feel richer and stranger. Their ancient ancestors once carried shells. Long before the modern body plan appeared, early relatives moved through the sea with hard external protection, more like the image we associate with snails or the chambered nautilus than with a present-day octopus. That shell was a fortress. It guarded soft tissues and offered safety in a dangerous ocean. Yet it also imposed limits. Protection comes with weight, bulk, and reduced freedom. Over immense stretches of time, some lineages changed course. The shell shrank, shifted inward, or vanished altogether, and with that loss came a different way of living. The animal became less armored but far more flexible, able to squeeze, twist, hide, and pursue opportunities that a rigid body could never exploit. This is one of those evolutionary turning points that feels almost dramatic when you imagine it. A family that once wore its shelter on the outside gradually stepped into a riskier world, and in doing so, opened the door to an entirely new style of life. Losing the shell may have helped drive octopus intelligence. Without heavy armor, survival would have depended less on sitting safely inside protection and more on making fast, flexible decisions in a dangerous world. A vulnerable animal needs options. It needs to hide, improvise, explore, and respond to surprise. That is why some scientists think shell loss may have created powerful pressure for more complex behavior. When safety is no longer built in, it must be earned, moment by moment. Suddenly, the environment matters more. Crevices matter. Timing matters. Memory matters. A body without rigid defenses may need a mind that can invent new strategies on the fly. This idea is fascinating because it suggests that intelligence did not emerge in spite of vulnerability, but partly because of it. Weakness may have pushed innovation. Exposure may have rewarded problem-solving. The octopus then becomes more than an odd animal. It becomes an example of how danger itself can shape brilliance, turning softness into a reason to become uncannily clever. An octopus mouth sits at the center of its arms. That arrangement makes the whole body feel built around capture. The arms do not simply surround the mouth by chance. They guide prey inward from every direction, passing food toward a central point where the decisive work begins. When an octopus seizes something, the movement can look like a whirl of limbs closing around a target and funneling it toward the hidden core. There is an elegance to that design. Every reaching limb leads back to the place where the meal will be processed. It also changes how we imagine the animal. Instead of having a face at one end and limbs attached behind it, the octopus is organized around a center of action. The body radiates outward like a living star. This makes its hunting style feel unlike that of most familiar animals. It does not chase with a head at the front. It gathers with a ring of intelligence and muscle that closes around the world. Its beak can pierce tough shells with surprising ease. Once prey has been drawn inward, that hard mouth part becomes the point where softness turns suddenly lethal. Crabs and shellfish may seem protected by armor built to resist bites and pressure, yet this tool can wedge into vulnerable points and break through defenses that appear secure. The motion is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is precise, almost economical, as if the animal knows exactly where force will matter most. That is what makes the scene so compelling. Heavy claws, rigid plates, and thick shells suggest a creature built for punishment, and then this compact structure defeats them from close range. The contrast is part of the wonder. The hunter looks fluid and delicate from a distance, yet carries enough cutting power to breach a miniature fortress. In the sea, survival often depends on finding the weak place in something stronger than you. Here, that skill has been concentrated into a weapon small enough to hide at the body's center. Many octopuses also use venom to subdue prey. That adds another layer to a hunt that already seems full of surprises. Force alone is not always the goal. Sometimes the animal needs to calm a struggling victim, weaken it, or make it easier to handle in the tight, awkward space of reef cracks and rocky shelters. Venom helps do that. Delivered through the bite, it can begin turning resistance into stillness, giving the predator control over prey that might otherwise slash, pinch, or escape. This is easy to overlook because the octopus already seems impressive enough without chemistry. Yet the biology becomes even more fascinating when you realize that hidden inside this soft body is a toxic toolkit shaped for close-quarters predation. The attack is not only physical, it is biochemical. That makes the octopus feel less like a simple ambush hunter and more like a quiet specialist equipped for difficult meals. Its success comes from combining touch, grip, stealth, and internal chemistry in one coordinated act. Blue-ringed octopuses carry venom powerful enough to stop breathing. They are small, often beautiful, and dangerously deceptive. When disturbed, vivid blue rings can flash across the body, turning the animal into a warning sign that seems almost too striking to be real. Beneath that display lies one of the most potent venoms in the marine world. It can paralyze muscles and shut down breathing with terrifying speed. What makes this fact so gripping is the mismatch between appearance and consequence. People often expect danger to come from large jaws, obvious aggression, or sheer size. Here, extreme power is concentrated in a creature small enough to fit in the palm of a hand. The rings themselves deepen the drama. The warning is visible, sudden, and unforgettable, as if the animal is announcing that beauty and peril have become the same thing. Few octopuses so vividly overturn our instincts about what looks harmless. This one shows that in nature, scale and threat do not always travel together. Some octopuses drill shells to reach the animal inside. This is one of the clearest examples of patience becoming a weapon. Instead of trying to smash a shell apart, the hunter can work on a single point, creating a small opening that gives access to the soft body concealed within. It is a methodical solution to a stubborn problem. Armor is most effective when it must be defeated everywhere at once. It is far less useful when a predator can focus on one weak place and keep working until the barrier yields. The image is extraordinary. A shellfish spends its life encased in a private fortress, only for a boneless predator to arrive and exploit it through precision rather than brute force. This makes the octopus feel almost like a locksmith of the reef, solving a sealed container with pressure, persistence, and remarkable control. The sea is full of protected meals. Very few hunters have evolved such an intimate way of opening them. Others pry shellfish open with patient, stubborn force. Not every meal requires a puncture. Sometimes the strategy is simpler in concept and exhausting in practice. Grip the shell, find leverage, and keep applying pressure until the valves part just enough to expose the prize inside. What makes this compelling is the sheer persistence involved. The animal is not acting in a burst of speed. It is committing to a contest of endurance and control. A shellfish survives by clamping shut with enormous strength, and for many predators, that is the end of the story. For an octopus, it can be the beginning. Arms hold, adjust, and maintain pressure while the prey gradually loses the battle. There is something almost suspenseful about it, because the action can be slow, silent, and relentless. The shell is trying to remain a closed world. The hunter is trying to open a future meal. In that struggle, patience becomes every bit as powerful as violence. Octopuses can recognize patterns and remember useful solutions. That ability turns the world into more than a series of passing moments. It means an object, shape, route, or challenge encountered once can matter later, because experience can be carried forward and applied again. In practical terms, this helps an octopus do more than react. It can build a history with its surroundings. A certain arrangement may signal food. A repeated obstacle may suggest a method that worked before. A visual pattern may become familiar enough to distinguish one situation from another. This is one reason their behavior feels so compelling to watch. There is often a sense that the animal is not merely present, but informed by what has happened already. The sea can be chaotic, yet memory allows order to emerge from that chaos. Recognition turns a confusing environment into a readable one. That is a profound step, because once a creature can spot regularities and retain solutions, the world becomes something it can learn, not just survive. Their neurons are arranged unlike ours, yet they achieve remarkable control. In a human body, most of the command system is concentrated in the brain and spinal cord. In an octopus, the story is distributed in a far stranger way. A large share of its neurons lies outside the central brain, especially in the arms, which means control is spread through the body instead of being held tightly at the top. And yet the result is not confusion. It is fluency. The animal can move with delicacy, seize prey, manipulate awkward objects, and shift from stillness to sudden action without seeming tangled in its own limbs. That is what makes this so astonishing. The architecture looks unfamiliar, but the outcome is elegant. Nature has reached high performance by taking a route very different from the one our lineage followed. The octopus reminds us that intelligence and control do not need to be organized like ours to be effective. Evolution can write working systems in more than one language. An octopus arm can keep moving and reacting after separation. That sounds almost supernatural, yet it reveals just how much processing power lives in the limb itself. Even when detached from the body, an arm may still curl, grip, and respond to touch for a time. The movement is not a ghostly after effect in the way people often imagine. It reflects local circuitry that can continue operating briefly without central oversight. That tells us something profound about how this animal is built. A limb is not merely a passive tool waiting for distant orders. It contains machinery for sensing and response within its own structure. For us, the idea feels deeply strange because we expect control to vanish when the connection is broken. Here, the connection mattered, but it was never the whole story. The arm carried part of the system with it. That makes the body feel less like one center directing many parts, and more like a federation of capable units working together under ordinary circumstances. Each arm can make local decisions without waiting for the brain. Imagine trying to coordinate 8 flexible limbs in a cluttered underwater world filled with narrow gaps, moving prey, and delicate surfaces. If every tiny adjustment had to travel to a single command center and back again, the whole system would slow down. The octopus solves that problem by giving each arm a measure of local autonomy. A limb can adjust its own movements, refine its own grip, and respond to nearby conditions while the central brain handles broader goals. That division of labor is one reason the animal seems so fluid. It does not micromanage every contact point. It delegates. In human terms, that feels both efficient and uncanny. The brain sets direction, but the details of action can be worked out on the spot by the limbs themselves. This creates a body that behaves less like a puppet and more like a team. Control is shared, and that shared control is part of the genius. That distributed control helps an octopus handle 8 limbs at once. For most animals, managing so many flexible appendages would seem like a recipe for chaos. Arms could not, conflict, or simply get in one another's way. Yet the octopus moves through the world with a degree of coordination that often feels effortless. One arm may probe a hole. Another braces against rock. Another steadies the body. Others remain ready for capture, retreat, or sudden change. This works because the burden of control is not piled onto one overworked center. It is spread through the system. That allows many actions to unfold at the same time, without collapsing into confusion. The result is not just motion. It is multitasking made physical. The animal can gather information, maintain balance, and prepare for the next move, all in a single flowing moment. When people say an octopus looks intelligent, this is part of what they are seeing. Thought seems to be happening everywhere at once. Octopus arms are muscular hydrostats, like tongues with suckers. That phrase describes a remarkable engineering solution. Instead of using bones and joints for support, the arm is built from densely arranged muscles that can maintain shape, change stiffness, and generate movement all on their own. A tongue works on the same general principle, which is why the comparison is so useful. But now imagine that design extended into 8 long limbs, each capable of reaching, coiling, grasping, and exploring with extraordinary nuance. The lack of bones is not a missing feature. It is what makes the whole system possible. Because there are no rigid segments, movement is not limited to a few hinge points. The arm can curve anywhere along its length, and every part can contribute differently depending on the task. This creates motion that feels alive in an unusually direct way. The limbs do not swing like tools attached to a body. They seem to think their way through space as they go. They can bend, twist, stiffen, and curl with no bones. That freedom gives the octopus a physical vocabulary unlike almost any other animal. A limb can wrap around a stone, flatten against the sea floor, spiral through a crevice, then suddenly become firm enough to lever or hold. Movement is not restricted to the familiar mechanics of elbows, wrists, and knees. It can happen almost anywhere, in almost any pattern, with continuous change from one shape to the next. This is why watching an octopus often feels so hypnotic. The body does not simply move through space. It composes itself anew from moment to moment. Stiffness and softness become adjustable properties rather than fixed traits. That matters in practical ways. A searching arm can stay supple, while an anchoring arm becomes stable. A concealed body can remain low, while a single limb extends with remarkable reach. Flexibility here is not just range of motion. It is an ever-shifting negotiation between form, force, and purpose. An octopus can explore an object before deciding how to handle it. That small pause can be one of the most revealing moments in its behavior. Instead of striking blindly or acting with rigid routine, it may touch, turn, test, and assess. An unfamiliar item is not just encountered. It is investigated. The arms move over the surface, gather details, and seem to weigh possibilities before a stronger response follows. That makes the animal feel strikingly thoughtful, not because it resembles us exactly, but because it shows a willingness to gather information before committing itself. In the sea, that caution is valuable. A shell might hide food. It might also contain risk. A crevice might offer shelter. It might conceal a threat. Exploration becomes a way of reducing uncertainty. What fascinates people is how deliberate it can look. There is often an impression of attention at work, as though the animal is not merely touching the world, but asking it questions before deciding what kind of answer to give. Suckers can sense chemicals as well as touch. That means an octopus does not experience contact the way we do. When a sucker lands on a surface, it can gather information about texture and pressure, but it can also detect chemical cues dissolved in the surrounding water and left upon what it touches. The result is a far richer kind of contact, one that blends feeling with a form of close-range tasting. This makes the arms into investigative instruments of extraordinary sophistication. A rock is not just hard or smooth. A hiding place is not just narrow or open. Each touch can carry traces of food, danger, recent activity, or biological identity. To us, those categories are usually separated into different senses. For the octopus, they converge at the point of contact. That helps explain why the animal can seem so informed by touch alone. It is not simply patting the world for shape. It is reading chemical signatures woven into the surfaces around it. Octopuses may taste prey before they actually eat it. That possibility gives hunting an added layer of intimacy and precision. Long before a meal reaches the mouth, the animal may already be sampling chemical information through its arms and suckers. This allows it to distinguish living prey from empty shell, to judge what lies hidden inside a crevice, or to decide whether something is worth the effort of capture at all. In other words, the evaluation begins during contact, not after it. That is a radically different relationship with food from our own. We often separate touching from tasting into distinct steps. The octopus can blur those boundaries. A limb reaches into darkness and begins identifying a potential meal while it is still out of sight. That makes the hunt feel less like a sudden grab and more like an unfolding conversation between predator and environment. The body is already learning the answer before the bite ever happens. By the time the prey is taken, much has already been discovered. Their bodies combine softness, strength, and astonishing fine control. That combination is one of the great marvels of the animal kingdom. Softness allows entry into cracks and hidden chambers that would block rigid hunters. Strength allows the body to anchor, pull, and overpower prey that resists violently. Fine control allows every reach, grip, and adjustment to be tuned with precision rather than wasted in clumsy force. Usually, we expect these qualities to compete with one another. Something soft seems fragile. Something strong seems heavy. Something precise seems delicate. In the octopus, all three coexist. That is why the body can seem almost impossible while you watch it. A single animal can act like fluid, cable, and hand in the span of a few seconds. It can disappear into shelter, then emerge ready to manipulate a difficult object or sees a struggling victim. This is not only beautiful design, it is a reminder that nature sometimes solves problems by uniting traits we would never think to place together. Most octopuses live alone and meet others only to mate. For an animal this intelligent, that solitude feels surprising. We often imagine cleverness leading towards social groups, alliances, and constant interaction. Yet many octopuses spend most of their lives apart, tucked into separate dens and moving through their own hunting grounds without companionship. That choice shapes everything. There is no herd to disappear into, no parent to follow, no pack to learn from for long. Each individual must read the world alone and make its own decisions in real time. When another appears, the meeting can be tense, cautious, and charged with risk. There is curiosity, but there is also the possibility of conflict, competition, or worse. That gives their lives a stark, almost solitary grandeur. An octopus is often a self-contained intelligence, moving through the sea by itself, solving each night's problems without help. Its brilliance unfolds in private, hidden among rocks, shadows, and brief encounters that may never happen again. Yet a few places have revealed crowded octopus settlements. That discovery startled scientists because it broke the familiar image of the octopus as an almost purely solitary creature. In a few unusual locations, researchers found many individuals living unusually close together, with dens clustered across the sea floor in numbers that seemed far beyond chance. Suddenly, the social story became more complicated. These sites suggested that under the right conditions, especially where food is abundant and shelter is available, octopuses may tolerate one another far more than expected. The scene is fascinating because it feels like peering into a hidden version of their world, one where neighbors matter and repeated encounters become part of daily life. There can be posturing, competition, mating, and shifting tension, all within a space busy enough to resemble a strange underwater village. These places do not erase the species' solitary reputation, but they do crack it open. Even with octopuses, the sea still has ways of surprising us. Males use a specialized arm to transfer packets of sperm. Among the 8 arms, one is modified for reproduction, and that single difference turns the mating process into one of the strangest in the animal kingdom. Rather than relying on the kind of direct body contact we might expect, the male uses this arm to place sperm packets into the female's mantle cavity. The limb is so distinctive in function that early naturalists once struggled to understand what they were seeing. In some species, the mating arm can look subtle. In others, its role becomes one of the defining details of the male body. What makes this fact so captivating is how elegantly it fits the octopus form. Reproduction is not handled by a separate organ jutting awkwardly from an otherwise integrated design. It is woven into the arm plan itself. The very limbs used to explore, grip, and navigate the world also carry forward the next generation. In octopuses, even courtship begins with anatomy that seems almost impossible. Some males keep their distance to avoid being eaten. That grim caution tells you everything about how risky octopus courtship can be. Approaching a potential mate is not simply a matter of attraction. It is a calculation shaped by hunger, size, timing, and danger. In some species, males may remain at the edge of reach while extending the mating arm toward the female, rather than moving fully into her grasp. The strategy makes brutal sense. The female may be much larger, and in the hard economy of the sea, a smaller male can look alarmingly like both partner and meal. This gives their reproductive lives a strange intensity. Courtship is not wrapped in safety or sentiment. It unfolds at the border between continuation and annihilation. That tension makes every successful mating feel like a narrow negotiation with death. The male does not merely seek contact. He manages risk with great care, as though every movement is asking the same urgent question: how close can I come and still leave alive? A female can lay tens of thousands of eggs. That number sounds almost unreal until you remember how unforgiving the ocean can be to tiny lives. Currents scatter the young. Predators sweep through. Chance alone erases enormous numbers before adulthood is even possible. Against that backdrop, abundance becomes strategy. By producing so many eggs, a female fills the future with possibility, giving at least some of her offspring a chance to survive in a world determined to reduce their numbers. There is also something deeply moving about the scale of that investment. Hidden in a den or attached beneath rock, this great cluster of developing life represents an entire generation compressed into one place. Each egg is small, but together they form a kind of living promise, fragile and immense at the same time. The female has placed her entire reproductive hope into this suspended constellation. The sea may take most of it. Even so, she prepares a beginning vast enough to challenge the odds. She cleans, guards, and aerates those eggs for weeks or months. This is not passive waiting. It is constant work. The mother tends the clutch with extraordinary care, passing water over the eggs so they remain rich in oxygen and free from the buildup of debris, microbes, and suffocating growth. She touches them, watches them, and refuses to abandon them. Day after day, her world contracts to this single responsibility. The hunt, the wider reef, the shifting opportunities of the sea all fade into the background. What remains is vigilance. The eggs cannot flee, defend themselves, or demand attention with cries. So she supplies the devotion they cannot request. That is part of what makes this stage so haunting. The scene can appear still from a distance, yet it contains relentless effort and total commitment. Life is being defended not through violence or speed, but through endurance. The future survives because one exhausted body keeps moving water, keeps watch, and refuses to leave its post. Many octopus hatchlings begin life as tiny ocean drifters. At the start, they are not miniature adults creeping confidently over the seabed. Many enter the world as part of the plankton, suspended in the open water and carried by currents through a realm that is beautiful, exposed, and enormously dangerous. Their first days unfold in a vast moving wilderness where they must feed, avoid becoming food, and survive without the shelter of a den. This stage feels almost shocking when set beside the secretive lives of many adults. The future master of camouflage may begin as a speck adrift in the sunlit upper sea. That contrast makes their life story feel even more dramatic. Before there is cunning concealment among rocks and coral, there is a drifting childhood shaped by chance and current. The ocean decides much of the journey. A hatchling may be swept far from where it began, entering a world so large that survival itself seems almost miraculous. And yet some do survive and continue the story. Those young can look nothing like the adults they become. This is one of the quiet wonders of marine life. The hatchling may bear only a faint resemblance to the later animal that will stalk the seabed, occupy a den, and command 8 powerful arms with mature confidence. Early life can have different proportions, different habits, and even a different whole way of occupying the ocean. To an untrained eye, the tiny drifting form might not look like a future reef hunter at all. That distance between youth and adulthood matters because it reveals how much transformation is packed into a single lifetime. The octopus does not simply grow larger. It moves between worlds. It begins in one style of existence, exposed to currents and open water, then becomes a very different kind of creature shaped for benthic life below. That shift feels almost like a hidden second birth. The animal we picture is only the final version, not the strange and vulnerable beginning from which it emerged. Octopus mothers die after reproduction because their bodies switch into decline. This is one of the saddest and most astonishing patterns in their lives. After mating and brooding, the mother's body begins to move toward death with terrible inevitability. She stops caring for herself. She may cease feeding, weaken visibly, and enter a downward spiral that ends soon after the eggs hatch or fail. This is not simply exhaustion in the ordinary sense. It is a built-in biological transition, as though the body has crossed a threshold and cannot return. All remaining energy is directed toward the final reproductive effort, and then the system begins to close down. The effect is heartbreaking, because her devotion has already been so complete. She has guarded the next generation with everything she has, and in doing so becomes part of the cost of its arrival. In the octopus world, motherhood is not only care, it is terminal sacrifice written directly into physiology, a life ending so another life can begin. Scientists linked that tragic decline to a gland behind the eyes. That gland is called the optic gland, and despite its name, its importance reaches far beyond vision. Researchers found that it plays a central role in the hormonal cascade that follows reproduction, helping drive the mother into the final phase of her life. In other words, the decline is not just a vague fading. It is orchestrated by chemistry. This discovery makes the story even more haunting, because it suggests the process is controlled by an internal signal rather than left to chance. The body is, in a sense, instructed to change course after reproduction. Scientists have compared the gland's influence to roles played by major endocrine organs in other animals, which turns a deeply emotional seeming story into one of physiology and regulation. Yet the science does not make it colder. It makes it stranger. Behind the octopus's eyes sits a gland that helps govern one of the most dramatic endings in nature, where reproduction and death become tightly bound together. Octopuses probably dream, and sleeping ones can rapidly change color. Watch a resting octopus for long enough, and something extraordinary can happen. A body that seems settled and still may suddenly ripple through dark and pale patterns, as if invisible scenes are passing across the skin. The arms can shift. The eyes may tighten. The whole animal appears to enter a more active inner state while remaining asleep. Researchers have compared these phases to dreamlike activity, though of course we cannot ask what an octopus experiences from within. That uncertainty is part of the wonder. Something is happening behind the stillness, and it seems rich enough to spill outward onto the body itself. In humans, dreams are hidden. In an octopus, the skin may reveal part of the process in living color. That makes sleep feel less like shutdown and more like another frontier of mystery. Even at rest, the animal remains difficult to imagine fully, as though the secret life of its mind continues glowing just beneath the surface. Their sleep includes quiet phases and more active, twitching phases. That pattern makes their rest look startlingly familiar in one sense and deeply strange in another. At times, the body becomes calm, the skin stays relatively stable, and the animal seems fully withdrawn from the world. Then a different phase arrives. Color changes may flicker over the body, the suckers can move, and small twitches pass through the arms and eyes. The contrast suggests that sleep is not one simple state. It unfolds in stages, with shifts between deeper stillness and bursts of internal activity. For anyone who thinks of octopuses as alien, this is one of the most fascinating bridges between their lives and ours. They do not merely pause. They cycle through complex forms of rest that hint at memory processing, neural activity, or dreamlike states we do not yet fully understand. Even unconsciousness becomes elaborate. The sleeping octopus is not blank. It is still passing through hidden weather of the mind. Some species seem bold and curious, while others are shy. That variation matters because it reminds us we are not dealing with one flat template repeated across the ocean. Different species can meet the world with noticeably different temperaments. One may approach novelty inspect movement, and seem eager to interact with unfamiliar objects. Another may retreat quickly, stay hidden longer, and rely more heavily on caution than exploration. This gives the octopus world a richness people do not always expect from invertebrates. Temperament is not just a human or mammal story. It appears here too, shaping how different animals use the same extraordinary toolkit. That is part of what makes them so captivating. Intelligence is not only about what a creature can do in theory, it is also about how it tends to behave in practice. Curiosity changes experience. Shyness changes experience. Across species, those tendencies may alter the whole rhythm of life, from risk-taking to hunting to how readily the animal reveals itself at all. Octopus personality may affect how it hunts, hides, and explores. This is where behavior stops feeling mechanical and starts feeling individual. A bolder animal may leave shelter sooner, investigate unfamiliar spaces more readily, and take chances that a cautious one would avoid. A more reserved individual may linger near safety, rely on concealment for longer, and approach the world with careful hesitation. Over time, those differences can shape the entire texture of a life. Two octopuses in the same habitat may not use it in the same way. One turns the reef into a field of opportunities. Another treats it as a map of dangers to be navigated with care. That makes their behavior feel more layered and alive. The same anatomy can produce different styles of existence. Personality then becomes more than a charming idea. It becomes a factor in survival. How a creature responds to uncertainty may influence what it finds, what it avoids, and whether it lives long enough to keep learning. They can remember unpleasant experiences and avoid repeating them. That ability gives the world a moral weight of sorts, not in the human sense of right and wrong, but in the sense that bad outcomes can leave a lasting imprint. A painful encounter, a failed approach, or a threatening situation does not always vanish into the flow of the next moment. It can alter future behavior. That matters enormously in a dangerous environment where repeating a mistake may be fatal. Learning from reward is useful. Learning from discomfort may be even more important. The octopus that remembers trouble can become more selective, more careful, and more skilled at steering away from hidden risk. What makes this fascinating is the emotional flavor it seems to carry from our point of view. We recognize avoidance shaped by memory because it feels close to our own experience. Something bad happened, and the animal changed because of it. The reef becomes not just a place of action, but a place of remembered consequences. An octopus can use landmarks to navigate back to its den. That means the seafloor is not just a blur of rocks and sand. It can become a readable landscape with stable reference points that matter. A den may lie tucked beneath a ledge or hidden within broken coral, and yet the animal can leave to hunt, explore a wider area, and then return with striking accuracy. This suggests a spatial memory more sophisticated than simple wandering. The surrounding world is being mapped in some meaningful way. Landmarks help anchor that map. A ridge, a patch of rubble, a distinctive opening. These features can guide the journey home. That is part of what makes the behavior so impressive. Home is not found by chance each time. It is located through remembered structure. In a habitat full of visual clutter and shifting light, that is no small achievement. The octopus moves through complexity and still keeps track of where safety lives, as though carrying a private chart of the neighborhood in its mind. Some octopuses stalk prey with eerie patience. There is nothing frantic about this kind of hunt. The animal slows down, lowers itself, and advances with such control that it can seem more like an intention moving across the seabed than a body. Every small adjustment matters. The prey may not even realize danger is closing in because the approach is measured to avoid alarm. That patience is what makes the scene so tense. The predator is not relying on speed to rescue a poor plan. It is building the moment carefully, reducing distance while staying unreadable. In this style of hunting, stillness becomes part of the attack. A pause is not hesitation. It is preparation. The octopus seems to understand that the best strike often begins long before the final movement. Watching this unfold can feel almost unsettling, because the animal appears utterly composed, as though it has entered a state where time stretches and only the final position matters. Others pounce in a sudden blur of arms. Then the whole mood changes. Instead of prolonged approach, the attack comes as an explosion. One moment the prey is exposed. The next, it is engulfed by a rapid spread of limbs that closes from several directions at once. The speed is startling because it emerges from a body that can seem so controlled and measured only an instant before. This is one of the octopus's great gifts as a predator. It can convert calm into violence without warning. The prey does not face a simple lunge from front to back. It faces enclosure. Arms descend, wrap, and pin with a speed that turns escape routes into memory. That suddenness is why the attack feels almost theatrical, even when it lasts only a second. The reef offers no announcement. The hunter does not roar or charge. It simply becomes motion all at once. The ocean seems empty, and then the trap has already closed. Hunting success often depends on timing, texture, and surprise. That trio reveals how subtle octopus predation can be. Timing matters because the strike must come before prey can flee, clamp shut, or signal alarm. Texture matters because the hunter's own surface can help it approach unnoticed, blending into seabed, algae, or broken rock until the final moment. Surprise matters because hesitation from the prey can mean everything. A crab that reacts 1 second too late is already caught. A fish that fails to read the danger in time may swim directly into reach. This is not brute force hunting in the style of a straightforward chase. It is a performance built from positioning, disguise, and the careful selection of when to act. That is what makes it so fascinating to watch. The ocean does not merely contain hunter and hunted. It contains a contest over perception itself. The octopus wins by controlling what the prey notices, when it notices, and how quickly that realization turns into panic. An octopus can become both trapdoor and ambush in one moment. Picture the seabed from the prey's point of view. There is sand, scattered stone, perhaps a shadowed opening that seems like part of the terrain. Nothing appears urgent. Then the ground itself comes alive. Arms erupt from concealment, the hidden body surges upward, and what looked like shelter becomes attack. That is the genius of this strategy. The animal does not only hide near the environment. It hides as part of the environment, using stillness and position so effectively that the strike seems to emerge from the landscape itself. Trapdoor spiders do something similar on land, but beneath the sea, the effect feels even stranger. A patch of seafloor turns into a predator without warning. This is not merely camouflage serving defense. It is camouflage weaponized for precision. The octopus waits until the world trusts the disguise, then breaks the illusion at exactly the wrong moment for anything standing too close. There are hundreds of octopus species, from tide pools to abyssal depths. That range is one of the most astonishing things about the whole group. We are not talking about a single kind of animal repeated across the planet, with minor variations. We are talking about a vast cast of species adapted to wildly different worlds. Some live where waves crash over sunlit rock, and every hour can change the conditions. Others exist far below, in darkness so complete that day and night no longer matter. Between those extremes lies an enormous spread of habitats, temperatures, predators, and ways of life. This matters because it turns the octopus from a curiosity into an entire universe of experiments. The familiar image most people carry in their minds is only one version among many. The group as a whole shows how flexible this body plan can be. From shallow coastlines to some of the least accessible places on Earth, octopuses have found ways to make the ocean their own. The giant Pacific octopus is among the largest octopuses on Earth. There is something unforgettable about the scale of one of these animals. People often imagine octopuses as compact, secretive creatures that fit neatly into cracks in the reef. Then they meet the giant Pacific octopus, and the idea expands dramatically. A single individual can have an arm span that feels almost impossible when seen in person, with thick limbs, powerful suckers, and a body that seems capable of turning an entire patch of seafloor into its territory. Yet the most fascinating part is that even at this size, it remains unmistakably octopus. It is still flexible, still inquisitive, still able to fold all that mass into shelter with surprising grace. That combination of bigness and fluidity gives it a special power in the imagination. It feels like the familiar octopus form enlarged into something nearly mythical, a creature that can be both colossal and subtle, commanding and elusive at the same time. The Dumbo octopus flaps ear-like fins through the deep sea. Few octopuses look so instantly dreamlike. Suspended in the dark water, with rounded fins rising from the head like soft ears, this animal seems less like a lurking hunter and more like something imagined for a storybook. Yet it is perfectly real and beautifully suited to life in the deep. Instead of depending mainly on sudden jets and crawling over hard surfaces, it often moves with slow, hovering grace, using those fins to propel itself through the water column. The effect is almost serene, which makes it especially striking against the harshness of its environment. Far below the sunlit sea, where pressure is immense and food may be scarce, this strange little traveler drifts through black water with an elegance that feels nearly unreal. The Dumbo octopus reminds us that deep-sea life is not only fierce or monstrous. Sometimes it is gentle-looking, delicate, and every bit as astonishing as anything nearer the shore. Some tiny octopuses could sit comfortably in your palm. That contrast with the giants is part of what makes the group so captivating. At the smaller end of the scale, there are species so compact that their whole lives unfold in spaces many predators would barely notice. A shell, a bottle fragment, a narrow crack. These can become an entire arena for hiding, hunting, and surviving. Small size changes everything. It can make an octopus harder to spot, easier to conceal, and able to exploit miniature worlds that larger animals cannot use well. But it also raises the stakes. A tiny hunter lives in a sea where danger is everywhere and margins are narrow. Watching one move can feel almost magical because all the signature octopus qualities are still there. The curiosity remains. The precision remains. The sudden transformation remains. You are looking at the same astonishing design, just compressed into a form so small that a whole life could begin and end in the space above your hand. Deep-sea octopuses endure cold, darkness, and crushing pressure. To us, those conditions sound less like a habitat and more like an impossibility. The deep ocean is bitterly cold, almost entirely dark, and weighted by pressure so immense it would destroy a human body instantly. Yet octopuses live there, move there, hunt there, and reproduce there as though this silent realm was simply another version of home. That is one of the grandest facts about them. They are not limited to the comfortable parts of the sea. Some species belong to one of the most extreme environments on the planet. Life in that realm demands different bodies, different behavior, and different economies of energy. Food can be rare. Encounters can be sparse. Every movement may need to count. The deep-sea octopus is therefore not just an octopus in darkness. It is a specialist shaped by a world where survival depends on patience, efficiency, and a body capable of enduring conditions that still make the deep ocean feel almost extraterrestrial to us. Some brood their eggs for longer than almost any other animal. This is one of the most astonishing examples of patience in the natural world. In the deep sea especially, development can proceed with extraordinary slowness, and the mother's commitment stretches to match it. She does not simply deposit the eggs and leave. She remains with them through spans of time so long that they challenge our sense of what animal care can look like. The ocean around her continues on with its drifting particles, silent currents, and passing threats, while she holds to a single task with almost unimaginable endurance. What makes this so captivating is not just the length itself. It is the contrast between a short-lived animal and such prolonged devotion. Time in these lives is often compressed, yet here it seems to open into an extended vigil. The mother becomes a fixed point in a vast, moving world, giving months and sometimes far more to a future she will never see mature. One deep-sea octopus mother guarded eggs for more than 4 years. That record changed how many people think about marine motherhood. For more than 4 years, one female remained with her clutch on a deep-sea rock face, tending it through the slow passage of time in water so cold that development crawled forward at an astonishing pace. Imagine what that means. Seasons on land came and went. Human plans began and ended. Entire chapters of ordinary life unfolded above the waves, while she stayed there below, keeping watch in the dark. By the time the young finally emerged, they were unusually developed and far better prepared for survival than if they had hatched earlier in a more helpless state. That is what makes the story so moving. The long wait was not wasted. It gave the next generation a stronger beginning. Few acts of care in the animal world feel so prolonged, so costly, and so quietly heroic. It is patience measured not in days, but in years. Polar octopuses may live in water cold enough to numb most hunters. Cold changes the rules of life. It slows chemistry, stiffens flesh, and makes movement more difficult for many creatures. Yet some octopuses inhabit polar seas where the water is so frigid that it feels hostile even to the imagination. These are not mild coastal environments with occasional chills. They are worlds of near-freezing water, seasonal extremes, drifting ice, and long stretches shaped by cold above all else. To live there, an octopus must have tissues and chemistry that keep functioning when warmth is almost absent. That alone is extraordinary. But the deeper fascination lies in what this says about the group as a whole. Octopuses are not confined to warm, lively reefs or temperate shallows. Some have extended their lineage into regions that seem designed to exclude softness and fluid motion. In polar seas, the octopus becomes a lesson in biological resilience, proving that even an animal of supple flesh can belong to one of Earth's coldest realms. Reef octopuses inhabit a world of bright light and constant danger. Life on a reef is beautiful, but it is never safe. Light pours down through the water, illuminating coral, sand, and stone in dazzling detail. That makes the habitat rich in opportunities, yet it also leaves little room to disappear without skill. Predators patrol constantly. Prey remains alert. Every movement can be noticed. For a reef octopus, survival depends on navigating this exposed world with precision. It must read surfaces, exploit shadows, and judge exactly when to remain still and when to act. The reef rewards sharp decisions and punishes mistakes quickly. That is why these animals can seem so alert and responsive. Their home is visually crowded, ecologically intense, and full of watchers. What captivates us is that they do not merely endure such a place, they excel in it. Amid flashing fish, branching coral, and endless attention from predators and prey alike, the reef octopus becomes one of the most accomplished shapeshifters in the sea. Mud, sand, coral, and open water all shape different octopus bodies. Habitat does not merely provide a backdrop. Over evolutionary time, it helps sculpt the animal itself. A species that lives among coral may need one set of proportions, textures, and hunting strategies. One that lives over soft mud may benefit from another. In open water, different demands arise again, because drifting or swimming through the water column asks for a different relationship to concealment, buoyancy, and movement. This is what makes the diversity of octopuses so rewarding to study. The environment leaves its fingerprint on the bodied than. Shape, skin, behavior, and even the overall feel of an animal can shift according to where life is being lived. There is no single ideal octopus form that suits every place. Instead, the group keeps branching into solutions tailored to specific worlds. Each habitat writes its own pressures into flesh, and the result is a family of animals that feels endlessly inventive. Octopuses edit their RNA far more than most animals do. Most animals rely heavily on the genetic instructions stored in DNA, then use RNA as a fairly faithful working copy. Octopuses do something far stranger. They can revise many RNA messages after those messages are made, changing how genetic instructions are read before proteins are built. That means the body can adjust some of its molecular outputs without rewriting the deeper code itself. It is a remarkable trick, and one that gives octopus biology an added layer of flexibility that feels almost like post-production editing inside living cells. What makes this so fascinating is not only the mechanism, but the implication. The octopus is not simply running a fixed program. It has an extra way to tune how that program is expressed. At the molecular level, it seems less rigid than many other animals. Even before we reach behavior, camouflage, or problem solving, the very flow of information inside the octopus is already unusual, in a way that feels quietly astonishing. That editing is especially intense in their nervous systems. This detail makes the mystery even more compelling, because it places much of the molecular tinkering in the very tissues responsible for sensation, coordination, and behavior. Nerve cells depend on finely tuned electrical properties. Tiny changes in proteins can influence how signals travel, how quickly cells respond, and how circuits perform under different conditions. In octopuses, RNA editing appears especially active in these neural settings, which suggests their nervous systems may be tuned with unusual precision after the basic genetic message has already been written. That possibility is thrilling. It hints that some of the octopus's famous responsiveness may be supported not only by anatomy, but by dynamic molecular adjustment inside the machinery of the mind and body. The nervous system then becomes even more extraordinary, not just distributed and flexible in structure, but unusually adjustable in its underlying chemistry. The octopus may be fine-tuning thought itself at a level most animals barely touch. Octopus evolution may trade genetic flexibility for rapid neural fine-tuning. This idea is one of the most intriguing in modern cephalopod biology. Heavy reliance on RNA editing may offer short-term precision, especially in nervous tissue, but it may also come with evolutionary costs. If an organism depends strongly on editing RNA after the fact, certain genetic changes in DNA may become less free to vary over long timescales. In simple terms, the lineage may gain a powerful way to fine-tune function in the present, while giving up some room for easier change in the deeper code across generations. That trade-off is fascinating because it suggests evolution does not hand out gifts without limits. A solution that enhances moment-to-moment performance may reshape what is possible later. The octopus then becomes a study in biological compromise, as well as brilliance. Its remarkable molecular adjustments may not be a free bonus, but part of a larger bargain in which one kind of flexibility is exchanged for another. Their genomes helped reveal how unusual cephalopod biology really is. Once scientists began reading octopus genomes in detail, it became clear that these animals were not merely clever mollusks with a few striking traits. The genetic picture pointed toward a whole biology full of unexpected elaboration. Genes related to neural development, sensory systems, and body patterning showed that cephalopods had built their complexity along a route very different from the one taken by vertebrates. This mattered because it gave researchers a deeper map of how such unusual bodies and behaviors might arise. The octopus was not weird only on the surface. Its strangeness ran deep into the architecture of development and regulation. That made the genome feel less like a list of parts and more like a historical record of invention. Reading it was like discovering that the blueprint for the animal had been unconventional all along. The more scientists looked, the less the octopus seemed like a familiar creature with odd habits, and the more it seemed like a truly separate experiment in complexity. Scientists still debate just how octopus intelligence evolved so far. That debate is exciting because it means one of the animal's greatest wonders remains open. We can point to useful pressures. A vulnerable body without a shell may reward flexibility. Complex habitats may favor learning and exploration. Predatory life may demand problem-solving and quick adaptation. Yet even with those ideas, the full rise of octopus intelligence still resists any single neat explanation. That uncertainty matters. It tells us that intelligence is not a simple ladder with an obvious route upward. Different lineages may arrive at sophisticated behavior through very different combinations of ecology, anatomy, and evolutionary history. In the octopus, those paths seem especially hard to untangle because so many unusual traits are involved at once. The result is not frustration, but wonder. Science has explained much, yet the bigger story still has room for argument and discovery. The octopus remains intelligent enough to challenge not only prey and predators, but our theories as well. An octopus brain evolved along a path very different from ours. Our lineage built intelligence inside a vertebrate body, with a backbone, paired limbs, and senses organized in a very particular way. The octopus comes from a soft-bodied marine ancestry that diverged from ours hundreds of millions of years ago. There was no shared recent march toward planning, learning, and flexible behavior. There were two radically different journeys. That is what makes the octopus brain so philosophically powerful. It did not become impressive by following a familiar route with a few modifications. It emerged from another body, another ecology, and another set of evolutionary constraints entirely. This means that when we compare ourselves with an octopus, we are not looking at a close cousin who became clever in a slightly different manner. We are looking across a deep gulf of history at a second solution. The resemblance in behavioral sophistication becomes more astonishing precisely because the road to get there was so different. That makes octopuses a powerful test of what intelligence can be. When we ask what intelligence is, we often picture animals that resemble us in social life, body design, or facial expression. Octopuses challenge that habit. They show flexible problem-solving, exploratory behavior, and striking control, yet they do so in a body with 8 arms, distributed neural processing, and a life history utterly unlike our own. That makes them scientifically precious. They widen the sample. They force us to ask whether intelligence must come with long childhoods, social groups, hands, language-like signaling, or vertebrate brains. Perhaps some of those features help in certain lineages, but the octopus proves they are not the only path. The concept itself becomes broader and more interesting. Intelligence may be less about resembling human thought and more about building useful, adaptive complexity in whatever form evolution allows. The octopus then becomes more than an intriguing animal. It becomes a challenge to our definitions, asking whether we are brave enough to think bigger about minds. Their eyes evolved camera-like vision independently from vertebrate eyes. This is one of evolution's most beautiful surprises. The octopus one and the vertebrate eye share a striking overall design, complete with lens, retina, and image-forming structure, yet they did not inherit that setup from a recent common ancestor with such an eye already in place. Instead, similar visual solutions emerged along separate evolutionary paths. That means the camera-like eye arose more than once because it worked so well. For the octopus, this is especially arresting because it adds another layer to the feeling of encountering an intelligence both familiar and foreign. When it looks back at us, the eye seems recognizable, yet its history is profoundly separate. The resemblance is real, but the kinship is distant. Nature reached towards similar optics from different beginnings and arrived at comparable results. The consequence is almost poetic. Across deep time and distant lineages, evolution discovered that certain ways of seeing are simply too useful not to invent again. Octopuses show how evolution can invent similar solutions more than once. That idea sits at the heart of why they fascinate biologists so deeply. Certain problems keep returning in the history of life. How do you see clearly? How do you control a complex body? How do you navigate a challenging environment? Different lineages face these pressures, and sometimes they arrive at solutions that look unexpectedly alike, even when their ancestry is far apart. Octopuses reveal this beautifully. Their visual systems, behavioral sophistication, and adaptive flexibility show that evolution is not a one-time script performed by one privileged lineage. It is an ongoing process of discovery. Similar answers can emerge independently when the demands are strong enough. That does not make evolution repetitive. It makes it creative within constraints. The octopus becomes a living demonstration that nature can explore separate roads and still converge on designs of striking effectiveness. In that sense, every octopus is evidence that life does not merely wander. It also learns what works. They are a living lesson in convergent evolution and biological invention. To study an octopus is to watch two truths unfold at once. On one hand, evolution converges. It can arrive at familiar-looking answers, such as sophisticated eyes or advanced behavior, even in very different lineages. On the other hand, evolution invents. It produces bodies, nervous systems, and sensory worlds that do not resemble ours in their deeper organization. The octopus embodies both patterns at the same time. That is why it feels so rich scientifically. It is not simply an example of similarity or difference. It is both at once. Some features seem to echo other intelligent animals. Others feel utterly singular. Together they create a creature that teaches us how broad life's possibilities really are. The octopus is therefore not only fascinating in itself, it is instructive. It shows that nature can solve old problems with new machinery and new problems with startling originality. Few animals reveal the inventiveness of evolution with such elegance and force. Octopuses have inspired myths, monsters, and sea legends for centuries. Long before people understood cephalopod biology, they still saw enough to know that something uncanny lived below. A many-armed creature that could vanish, reappear, seize prey, and emerge from dark water was almost guaranteed to enter the imagination as more than ordinary animal life. That is how octopuses and their relatives slipped into stories of sea monsters, shapeshifters, and beings that blurred the line between nature and nightmare. The fascination makes sense. Even now, with science in hand, they still seem to exceed expectation. To earlier sailors, fishers, and coastal communities, those same qualities would have felt even more mysterious. A glimpse of curling arms in troubled water could become a tale repeated for years. What matters is not that old legends were accurate in detail. It is that real octopus strangeness was powerful enough to seed them. The animal's biology was so surprising that myth became one of its first biographies. Sailors once turned glimpses of giant cephalopods into kraken stories. On the open sea, uncertainty enlarges everything. A shape breaks the surface, a mass of arms appears in rough water, or a dead giant from the deep washes ashore half decayed and barely recognizable. Under those conditions, it is easy to see how fragments of truth can swell into legend. The kraken was never simply invented from nothing. It likely grew from real encounters with large cephalopods, filtered through fear, distance, weather, and retelling. That is what makes the story so satisfying. Behind the myth lurks genuine biology. Giant squids and large octopuses were more than strange enough to do the rest. To people without underwater cameras, research vessels, or modern anatomy, the ocean kept its largest soft-bodied animals wrapped in secrecy. A brief sighting could become a saga. The kraken reminds us that folklore often begins where observation ends, and with octopus-like creatures, the gap between the two was once enormous. Modern robotics studies octopus arms to build softer machines. Engineers love structures that can move through awkward spaces, handle delicate objects, and adapt to unpredictable environments. Octopus arms do all of that with astonishing ease, which is why they have become such powerful models for soft robotics. A rigid machine works well when the world is orderly. But inside collapsed buildings, around fragile tissues, or across rough natural terrain, flexibility becomes a gift. The octopus offers a blueprint for that kind of motion. Its arms bend continuously, grip irregular surfaces, and change stiffness without relying on hard joints. That has inspired robots designed to squeeze, curl, and manipulate in ways that traditional machines struggle to match. What makes this so fascinating is that one of the sea's strangest animals is now helping shape future technology. The lesson is humbling. Sometimes the best design ideas are not found in factories or equations first. They are already living in the ocean, moving quietly across the seafloor. Engineers study octopus skin to design better camouflage materials. The dream is not merely to dye a surface one color. It is to create materials that can change appearance dynamically, responding to surroundings in real time. Octopus skin makes that dream feel far less imaginary. It can alter color, contrast, reflectivity, and surface form with astonishing coordination, creating camouflage that is fast, flexible, and context-sensitive. Engineers study these mechanisms because they suggest new ways to build adaptive materials for technology, clothing, and devices that need to blend into complex environments. The challenge is immense because the octopus does not rely on one trick. Its skin combines multiple systems working together at once. That complexity is exactly what makes it inspiring. A living body already solves the problem that designers still struggle to master. The octopus then becomes more than a marvel of biology. It becomes a teacher for materials science, showing that the future of camouflage may depend on copying lessons written in skin. Their suckers inspire new ideas for underwater gripping technology. Gripping underwater is harder than it looks. Surfaces are slippery, visibility may be poor, and conventional tools can fail on irregular shapes. Octopus suckers offer a brilliant alternative because they hold with impressive reliability while staying adaptable and sensitive. They can attach to rough or curved surfaces, release quickly, and work without the clumsy rigidity of many mechanical claws. That has made them deeply attractive to engineers building underwater robots, medical tools, and handling systems for delicate materials. What is especially exciting is that the sucker is not just strong, it is subtle. It balances attachment with control, which means inspiration drawn from it can help machines handle objects that are fragile, uneven, or hard to predict. The octopus once again turns out to be an engineer's guide hidden inside an animal body. A tool shaped by millions of years of marine survival is now helping humans imagine better ways to hold the world. Octopuses can alter ecosystems by heavily hunting crabs, shellfish, and fish. A predator does not need to be huge to shape a habitat. If it feeds heavily on certain animals, it can change which species thrive, which remain suppressed, and how energy moves through the food web. Octopuses do exactly that in many places. By hunting crabs, shellfish, and fish, They influence the abundance of creatures that might otherwise graze, scavenge, or prey on others in turn. The result can ripple outward through the ecosystem in ways that are easy to miss, unless you look broadly. A den surrounded by shell remains is not just evidence of one meal. It is a sign that a local predator has been restructuring life around it, piece by piece. This makes the octopus more than an isolated marvel. It is an ecological force. Beneath the fascination of camouflage and intelligence lies an animal capable of reshaping the community around it simply by eating, choosing, and surviving where it does. They are prey as well, feeding sharks, seals, and larger fish. For all their brilliance, octopuses are not only hunters. They are also part of the menu, and that fact keeps their world balanced on a knife edge. Sharks, seals, dolphins, eels, and large fish may all take them when the opportunity appears. This matters because it prevents us from imagining the octopus as an untouchable mastermind of the sea. It is clever, but still vulnerable. In fact, much of its astonishing biology makes more sense once you remember how many animals are trying to catch it. Camouflage, speed, concealment, sudden escape. All of these are shaped by the pressure of being edible. That is part of what makes the octopus story so rich. Its intelligence did not evolve in safety. It evolved under constant threat. Every hidden den and every burst of movement belongs to a life lived between success and becoming someone else's meal. Genius in the sea does not guarantee security. Some species thrive in changing seas better than many neighbors. That resilience has surprised researchers because octopuses can sometimes respond quickly to shifting conditions that trouble other marine animals. Their fast growth, flexible behavior, broad diets, and ability to exploit new opportunities may help certain species expand when environments change. In some regions, they appear capable of moving into altered ecosystems with impressive speed, taking advantage of openings that slower or more specialized animals cannot use as easily. This does not mean every octopus benefits from every change. The ocean is too complex for such a simple story. But it does suggest that some members of the group are unusually adaptable in unstable times. That is fascinating because it fits the larger pattern of their biology. They are creatures of improvisation. When the sea rearranges itself, some octopuses may be better equipped than many neighbors to read the new conditions and respond. Flexibility, once again, becomes one of their greatest strengths. Others may be vulnerable because short lives leave little room for error. A fast life can be a strength, but it can also be a weakness. Many octopuses grow quickly, reproduce once, and die, which means each generation has limited time to succeed. If food becomes scarce, breeding conditions fail, or an environment shifts at the wrong moment, there may be little margin for recovery within that individual life. Long-lived animals can sometimes outlast bad periods. A short-lived octopus often has no such luxury. Everything must happen on schedule, or the chance is gone. That makes some species surprisingly fragile, despite all their cleverness. Intelligence helps, but it does not erase the mathematics of time. A brilliant animal with a brief life still lives under a hard deadline. This tension is part of what makes them so compelling. They seem full of possibility, yet much of that possibility burns quickly. Their lives can be dazzling, but they are also exposed to disruption in ways that leave almost no room for delay. Octopuses live fast, think hard, and disappear with breathtaking skill. That may be the simplest way to capture their entire style of existence. They grow quickly, solve urgent problems, navigate danger with remarkable intelligence, and survive through a combination of stealth, flexibility, and sudden action. There is very little wasted about them. Their lives do not unfold with the long social drama of elephants or whales. Instead, they blaze through the sea in a form of concentrated brilliance. What makes that so moving is the contrast between brevity and complexity. These are not simple creatures living short lives. They are among the most inventive animals on Earth, packed into a timetable that often feels cruelly brief. Perhaps that is part of why they fascinate us so deeply. Every moment seems heightened. Every escape feels earned. Every encounter feels temporary. The octopus does not linger in the imagination because it is easy to understand. It lingers because it seems to vanish just as we begin to realize how extraordinary it really is. An octopus can investigate you with a kind of living handshake. If one reaches toward a diver, a keeper, or an unfamiliar object, the contact can feel less like a simple touch and more like an examination. Arms curl, suckers settle, and the animal seems to read what it has encountered through a sequence of tiny decisions. It is not shaking hands in the human sense, of course, yet the comparison feels irresistible because the moment carries mutual awareness. You know you are being contacted, and it seems very much as though the octopus knows it is contacting someone, not something. That is what makes the experience so unforgettable. The touch is active, responsive, and strangely personal. It does not feel blind. It feels interested. Many animals brush against the world without much ceremony. An octopus often seems to question it. In that brief exchange, curiosity becomes physical. A soft arm reaches out, and suddenly you are no longer just observing the animal. You are part of its investigation. It may seem playful, yet it is always gathering information. That impression of play can be wonderfully misleading. To us, an octopus that explores a camera, tugs at equipment, or repeatedly interacts with an object can look mischievous or amused. But beneath that charming surface lies something more fundamental. The animal is sampling, testing, and learning. It is discovering what resists, what yields, what moves, and what might matter later. Even behavior that appears whimsical may carry an informational purpose. That is part of what makes octopus encounters so captivating. The line between play and investigation becomes hard to draw. A curious body keeps returning to the world, not because it is wasting time, but because contact itself is one of its ways of knowing. To watch this unfold is to see intelligence without the familiar signs we expect from mammals or birds. There is no grin, no obvious performance for an audience. There is only engagement, and behind that engagement, a constant appetite for data. Octopus intelligence is embodied, with thought flowing through movement and touch. For humans, thinking often feels separate from action, as though the mind sits behind the eyes and sends commands outward. In an octopus, that distinction seems far less clean. Understanding emerges through reaching, gripping, tasting, adjusting, and moving through space. The body is not merely carrying out thought after the fact. It is participating in the process from the beginning. This is one reason their intelligence feels so foreign and so compelling at once. The octopus does not simply inspect the world from a distance. It comes to know by entering into contact with it. Touch becomes inquiry. Motion becomes evaluation. The arms are not just tools. They are part of the cognitive event itself. That changes how we imagine a mind. Instead of a central thinker directing passive limbs, we meet a creature whose intelligence seems to live in the continuous exchange between body and world. Thought, here, is something you can almost watch happen in the skin. Their world may feel more textured and chemical than visual. We are visual creatures first in many ways, and that can mislead us when we imagine another mind. For an octopus, the world may not be organized chiefly around distant images in the way ours often is. It may be built more richly from surfaces, dissolved traces, local chemistry, and the information gathered through close contact. A crevice is not only a shape. It is a set of textures and signals. A passing animal is not only something seen. It is something that leaves traces in water, on stone, and in reach. This possibility makes the octopus world feel wonderfully unfamiliar. Even when sharing the same reef, we may not be inhabiting the same experience of it at all. The fish flash through color and motion. The octopus may be living inside a denser fabric of contact and chemical presence. That difference matters because it reminds us that intelligence is always tied to a sensory world, and not every sensory world resembles our own. They can turn from patient stillness to violent speed in seconds. That sudden change is one of the most arresting things about them. An octopus may wait so calmly that it seems almost detached from time itself, settled into rock, sand, or shadow with complete composure. Then, without warning, the entire body becomes action. Arms flare, the mantle tightens, the target is seized, or the animal launches away with explosive force. There is no gradual build-up that gives the moment away. The transition can be instantaneous. That contrast is what gives the octopus such dramatic presence. It is not merely fast, and it is not merely still. It can inhabit both extremes with equal conviction. A body that seemed restful becomes dangerous in a heartbeat. For prey, that suddenness is devastating. For us, it is mesmerizing. The animal appears to contain a hidden reserve of power behind its calm exterior, as though the stillness was never emptiness at all. It was stored decision, waiting for the exact moment to arrive. Few animals unite softness and ferocity quite like an octopus. At first glance, softness suggests vulnerability. Ferocity suggests teeth, armor, or brute mass. The octopus breaks that expectation completely. Its body is pliant, compressible, and almost delicate-looking in repose. Yet the same animal can overpower struggling prey, defend itself with startling force, and act with ruthless efficiency when the moment demands. That pairing gives it a unique emotional effect on us. It seems almost contradictory, and yet the contradiction is perfectly real. The same supple arm that glides over stone can become an instrument of capture. The same body that melts into shelter can surge outward with predatory purpose. This combination is part of the octopus's enduring power in the imagination. It does not fit neatly into categories of graceful or dangerous, fragile or formidable. It occupies both at once. Nature has taken one of the softest bodies in the sea and made it fully capable of intensity, control, and violence when survival calls for it. Every encounter with an octopus feels slightly like first contact. That feeling comes from a rare mix of recognition and distance. When an octopus turns toward you, follows movement, or reaches out with obvious interest, there is a sense of meeting another awareness. Yet that awareness does not feel familiar in the way a dog, ape, or dolphin might. It seems to arrive from a different design of life altogether. The body is wrong for our expectations. The movement is wrong. The way it perceives and responds appears to follow rules we can sense without fully sharing. This creates a peculiar emotional charge. You feel seen, but not in a way that fits neatly into human categories. The encounter becomes memorable because it is contact across a deep biological divide. There is mind here, unmistakably. But it comes wrapped in such unfamiliar machinery that the meeting feels almost extraterrestrial. Not because the animal is unreal, but because evolution has made something intelligent that still feels wonderfully outside our intuition. The more scientists learn, the stranger octopuses appear to become. Usually, knowledge makes the unfamiliar feel simpler. We explain a mystery, and the world becomes more ordinary. Octopuses often seem to do the opposite. Each answer opens onto another layer of surprise. Learn about the arms, and the nervous system becomes stranger. Learn about camouflage, and perception becomes stranger. Learn about reproduction, sleep, or genetics, and the whole animal grows more extraordinary rather than less. That is one reason they continue to grip both scientists and the public so powerfully. They resist flattening. They refuse to become a solved curiosity. Even careful study keeps revealing features that challenge our assumptions about bodies, minds, and evolution itself. This does not mean science has failed. It means the subject is genuinely rich. The octopus rewards explanation while preserving wonder. That is a rare combination. The more precisely we see it, the less it resembles a simple animal with a few odd traits, and the more it resembles a masterpiece of biological surprise. Octopuses challenge our ideas about minds, bodies, and what animals can do. They challenge the mind by showing intelligence in a form that is not social in the usual mammalian way, and not built on a vertebrate plan. They challenge the body by proving that softness can support control, strength, and astonishing versatility. And they challenge our wider sense of animal possibility by combining problem-solving, transformation, sensory complexity, and flexible behavior in one lineage so distant from our own. That is why octopuses matter beyond marine biology. They widen the frame. They force us to think less narrowly about what counts as sophistication, what a body can be organized to do, and how many routes evolution can take toward remarkable behavior. When we study them, we are not just learning about an unusual sea creature. We are testing the limits of our own assumptions. The octopus becomes a mirror in an unexpected form. By looking closely at it, we discover how many of our definitions were smaller than the living world. The octopus is one of evolution's boldest and most astonishing experiments. It feels that way because so many improbable traits meet in one body and somehow work together beautifully. A soft mollusk without a shell becomes a master hunter. A distributed nervous system achieves elegant coordination. Skin becomes disguise. Arms become sensing, gripping, and decision-making structures all at once. A life that is often brief still carries startling behavioral richness. None of this had to come together in exactly this form, and yet here it is, alive in the sea. That is what gives the octopus its lasting power over the imagination. It seems less like a predictable outcome and more like evolution testing the edges of what is possible. The result is not perfection in any simple sense. It is something better. It is originality with consequences. The octopus survives, learns, transforms, and vanishes according to rules that feel both ancient and surprising. In all of nature, very few animals make evolution look so daring. As we come to the end of our journey, the ocean begins to feel a little different now. What once seemed like open water now holds hidden minds, soft bodies shaped by deep time, and lives that unfold in ways both familiar and quietly strange. We have drifted past shifting colors and watchful eyes, through careful hunts and silent dens, and into a world where intelligence flows through arms as easily as it rests behind them. A world where patience can last for years, where escape can happen in an instant, and where even rest may flicker with unseen activity. The octopus does not stay still in the mind for long. It moves, reshapes, vanishes, and returns again in thought, just as it does in the sea. And perhaps that is part of its quiet magic. It reminds us that life is wider than we imagine, and that even in the depths, there are stories unfolding with elegance, mystery, and purpose. If you enjoyed this journey, you might like to continue drifting a little further. There is always another world waiting, another story to settle into. And if you feel inclined, you can like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps guide others here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, there is nothing more to follow. Let your breathing slow and your body grow heavy. Let the images fade softly into the background, like shapes dissolving into deep water. Sleep well, and good night.